Across the golden expanse of the African savannah, the air ripples with heat, shimmering above the low acacia trees and waving grass that hides both predator and prey. The silence here is deceptive. Every rustle, every shift in the wind, carries the potential for ambush. And at the center of this tension moves the cheetah, sleek, elegant, and ghost-like in its speed. It is the fastest land mammal on Earth, capable of surging from 0 to 60 miles per hour in a few heartbeats. But beneath this astonishing athleticism lies a paradox. One of nature's most fragile apex hunters is also among its most vulnerable. From a distance, the cheetah's hunting technique appears almost supernatural. It begins with calculated stealth, not speed. With shoulder blades flattened and belly pressed low, the cheetah glides through the grass like a shadow, closing the gap to its target with uncanny patience. It chooses its prey with precision, not just the slow or young, but those isolated by topography or wind direction. The final burst is not a random dash, but a precisely timed explosion of muscular efficiency, where each stride stretches over 20 feet and its spine flexes like a loaded spring, propelling the body in controlled flight. For 15 to 20 seconds, the world narrows to a blur of motion, friction, and velocity. And then, contact. The cheetah doesn't use brute force like a lion or pack coordination like wild dogs. It trips its prey with a swipe to the legs or a sideways bump, then quickly clamps down on the windpipe with surgical precision. But even in this moment of triumph, time is running out. The cheetah's body, optimized for acceleration, pays the price in stamina. Its large nasal passages gulp air, but its heart and lungs, though efficient, can't sustain prolonged exertion. Its internal temperature rises dangerously with each second. If the kill takes too long, it may overheat and collapse. If the prey struggles too much, the cheetah may abandon the hunt, not out of weakness, but out of biological necessity. It is a predator built for bursts, not endurance. But even when the kill is successful, another battle begins, one that the cheetah rarely wins. Unlike lions, cheetahs cannot defend their catch. They lack the muscle mass, the aggression, and the psychological intimidation that defines larger predators. Within minutes of a successful hunt, the savannah's scavengers begin to converge. A circling vulture becomes a beacon for opportunity. The dust and distress calls alert hyenas patrolling nearby. Lions, always alert to easy meals, can pick up the scent from over a kilometer away. What follows is a brutal economy of energy and dominance. Hyenas, with their bone-crushing jaws and social cohesion, waste no time in overwhelming a cheetah at a kill site. Even a single hyena can intimidate a cheetah into retreat, not because the cheetah is weak, but because the cost of injury is catastrophic. A single bite, a pulled muscle, a clawed eye, any of these could end the cheetah's ability to hunt altogether. Evolution has taught it the hard lesson. Survival means living to hunt again, not dying over a single meal. Lions are more direct. Their arrival sends the cheetah fleeing instantly. A lion doesn't need to chase. Its presence is enough. In many regions, up to 50% of cheetah kills are stolen within 30 minutes. In some areas, especially where lion and hyena densities are high, the percentage rises closer to 70. For every hunt won, there is a looming probability that the reward will be taken by force. Speed gets the dinner, but it doesn't guarantee the right to eat it. This dynamic shapes nearly every aspect of cheetah behavior. Unlike lions, cheetahs often hunt during the heat of the day, when their rivals are less active. This midday window, punishing for most predators, is an opportunity for the cheetah's heat-adapted physiology. Their semi-retractable claws act like cleats, providing traction on hot soil. Their nasal cavities cool incoming air. Still, they must weigh every hunt against the risk of interception. Often, cheetahs will drag their kill into the shade immediately, gorging as quickly as possible before the scavengers arrive. A single impala must be consumed in minutes, bones and all, and if the cheetah's cubs are nearby, they feed first. But even with these adaptations, the odds are stark. Cheetah cub mortality remains among the highest of any large carnivore in Africa, and one of the primary causes is starvation linked to kleptoparasitism, the scientific term for food theft. A mother cheetah, already strained by lactation and constant relocation to avoid predators, often cannot secure enough uninterrupted meals to sustain both herself and her cubs. The constant pressure to kill again, without the security to keep what she earns, creates a brutal cycle of energy depletion. This vulnerability is not a flaw in evolution. It is the price of specialization. Cheetahs have sacrificed power for speed, intimidation for finesse. Their lightly built frames, narrow hips, and flexible spines make them incapable of fighting off the enemies their speed temporarily outruns. Unlike other big cats that evolved to dominate through size or ambush through stealth and brute force, the cheetah represents a divergent path, one where the predator is constantly hunted in reverse by a system of ecological dominance. Their place in the food chain is defined not by their ability to kill, but by their inability to defend what they've killed. Ironically, the very trait that made them evolutionary marvels, their speed, is also their Achilles heel. In evolutionary terms, the cheetah is not a generalist. It cannot switch diets easily or adjust to different terrains. It thrives in open savannas with high prey density, but struggles in forests or regions with heavy competition. As human activity fragments habitats and predator densities shift, cheetahs find themselves increasingly outpaced by the ecological consequences of their own narrow niche. And yet, they endure, not by dominating, but by adapting quietly around the margins. By hunting at odd hours, by fleeing without shame, by raising cubs in solitude and secrecy. The cheetah survives not because it's the strongest predator, but because it understands better than most that in nature, survival is not always about winning. It's about lasting long enough to run again. In the vast open reaches of East Africa's savannah, where the horizon stretches flat and unbroken, and the midday heat beats down like a slow hammer, every life form has been sculpted by pressure. Not just the pressure of predation, but the unrelenting pressure of time, temperature, terrain, and energy. Here, speed is not a luxury, it is a currency. And no creature has evolved to spend that currency more efficiently or more precariously than the cheetah. To the untrained eye, the cheetah appears almost supernatural. Its body is a visual contradiction, long-legged yet lightweight, muscular yet narrow, poised yet impossibly fast. But beneath the elegance lies a physiology teetering on the edge of collapse. This animal is evolution's most audacious gamble, a predator engineered for short bursts of velocity so extreme that almost every other bodily function has been sacrificed to achieve it. Unlike lions, who are built like tanks, or leopards, who are adapted for ambush and power, the cheetah is a sprinter, tuned with the precision of a race car. And like any machine built for peak performance, it operates within a razor-thin margin of error. Start with the skeleton. The cheetah's spine acts like a biomechanical spring, flexing and extending with each stride to increase the animal's range of motion. Its elongated limbs are anchored by specialized musculature that stores and releases elastic energy with every bound. The claws, unlike those of other cats, do not retract fully. They remain semi-extended, functioning as cleats that grip the earth for traction at high speeds. The tail, long and muscular, acts as a counterweight and rudder, allowing the animal to pivot mid-sprint and maintain balance while making high-speed turns. A critical adaptation when chasing prey that zigzags in panic. But these adaptations come with consequences. To reduce weight and maximize acceleration, cheetahs have evolved smaller skulls, slimmer bones, and reduced jaw musculature. While this helps streamline the body for speed, it diminishes their ability to defend kills or withstand impact. Even a minor sprain, a pulled ligament or a cracked tooth can be life-threatening. A cheetah that can no longer chase cannot feed. There is no fallback strategy, no scavenging niche, no cooperative hunting group, no brute strength to steal from others. This dependency on pristine physical condition makes cheetahs extraordinarily fragile within a landscape that punishes vulnerability. Internal physiology mirrors this fragility. During a hunt, the cheetah's respiratory rate can spike to over 150 breaths per minute. Its heart races to near maximum capacity, and blood flow to the muscles reaches levels unseen in any other land predator. This acute physiological response generates heat, not just from muscle activity, but from cellular metabolism pushed to the brink. Unlike humans who sweat to dissipate heat, cheetahs must cool themselves through panting, shade-seeking, and inactivity. After a sprint lasting no more than 20 seconds, their internal temperature can climb rapidly toward lethal thresholds. If they do not stop the chase in time, the consequences are catastrophic. Organs can overheat, neurons can misfire, and collapse is a real and often fatal outcome. This thermoregulatory limitation defines cheetah behavior in ways that are subtle but critical. They hunt in the cooler hours of early morning or late afternoon, and unlike lions, avoid activity in the heat of the day unless absolutely necessary. When they do run, they choose terrain that favors short bursts and clear visibility, not dense undergrowth or complex terrain. The sprint is calculated, not reckless. If the prey is too far or the terrain too rough, the cheetah often disengages. This is not laziness or cowardice. It's a matter of survival. Every hunt risks overheating, and every injury, no matter how small, can cascade into starvation. Even reproduction is influenced by this fragile blueprint. Male cheetahs, often living in coalitions, will patrol territories fiercely, but rarely fight to the death. The risk of injury is too great. Female cheetahs must care for cubs while remaining mobile and under constant threat from larger predators. A single lion encounter can wipe out an entire litter. Cubs are moved frequently and hidden carefully, not just to avoid detection, but because the mother cannot afford the luxury of defending a fixed den. Her agility and health are the cub's only defense, and again, any injury, a twisted paw, a torn muscle, may doom both her and her offspring. From an ecological standpoint, the cheetah's specialization comes at a cost. Its niche is narrow. It requires open habitat, moderate prey densities, and low competition from more dominant carnivores. It cannot thrive in forests, nor does it adapt well to heavily human-altered landscapes. Habitat fragmentation, loss of prey, and rising predator densities, particularly lions and hyenas, have all contributed to the cheetah's steady decline in the wild. Conservationists now view them as indicators of healthy open ecosystems, because their very presence requires a balance of conditions that many other species can tolerate in imbalance. And yet, this fragility has not made the cheetah weak in evolutionary terms. It has persisted for over 2 million years, surviving ice ages, extinction events, and genetic bottlenecks. But unlike more generalized species that can adapt to a wide range of environments and strategies, the cheetah's resilience lies in its exactness, a predator that wins only by avoiding error. In evolutionary biology, this is known as a K-selected strategy: fewer offspring, longer care periods, and a strong dependency on stable environments. Cheetahs are not prolific breeders. They are not dominant hunters. They are specialists, the apex athletes of the plains, not the apex predators. In many ways, the cheetah represents one of nature's most sobering truths, that greatness often comes with fragility. Speed, elegance, and efficiency are not without cost. While other predators boast of power, dominance, or adaptability, the cheetah races on the edge of its limits every day, not out of glory, but necessity. It must win quickly, eat fast, recover quietly, and vanish before the world catches up to its temporary victory. It is a masterclass in evolutionary engineering, but like all machines pushed to their extremes, it is built to break. As dawn stretches a pale blue sheen across the African savannah, the grasses still soaked in the night's dew begin to shimmer like blades of glass. Herds of impala stir in the distance, flocks of guinea fowl erupt with sudden clatter from the underbrush, and above it all, the wind carries no scent of lion or hyena, only a subtle tremor in the rhythm of the plains. Then, out of the low mist they appear, 3 figures, lean and low, moving in perfect synchrony across the land like shadows that know exactly where they belong. These are not the solitary ghosts of the cat world. These are brothers, cheetahs, bound not just by blood but by strategy and by a shared claim to power. The image of the cheetah as a lone hunter, fragile and fleeting, is deeply ingrained in wildlife narratives. And for females, the stereotype largely holds true. Female cheetahs live and hunt alone, apart from their cubs, traversing vast ranges in search of prey while evading dominant predators. But males follow a different script entirely, one that reveals a far more intricate, cooperative, and surprisingly political facet of cheetah life. Among males, alliances are not only possible, they are often essential for survival, dominance, and reproductive success. These alliances, known as coalitions, usually form between 2 or 3 brothers from the same litter. Sometimes, unrelated males may join forces, but the strongest, most enduring coalitions tend to be familial. Once formed, the coalition becomes a singular territorial force, patrolling, hunting, and defending as a unit. They move together with tactical awareness, their spacing and posture more akin to a patrol than a pride. This is not simply companionship. It is a calculated survival adaptation in a landscape dominated by stronger, more aggressive predators. From a biological standpoint, Coalition behavior in cheetahs is one of the few examples of cooperative social bonding in an otherwise solitary species. It offers multiple advantages. Alone, a male cheetah has little chance of defending a territory large enough to access reliable prey and receptive females, particularly in areas with dense lion or hyena populations. But in a coalition, males can patrol and mark larger territories, challenge rival males, and monopolize mating access more effectively. In the presence of a coalition, solitary males are quickly displaced, pushed into suboptimal habitats with fewer opportunities and higher risks. The numbers don't just add protection, they create dominance. Territory for male coalitions is not passive space. It is actively managed, constantly tested, and deeply contested. Males mark boundaries with pungent urine sprays and tree rubs, establishing scent posts that communicate presence, strength, and readiness. These markers serve not only as warnings to rival males, but as signals to females in estrus, indicating that the territory is occupied by a dominant, healthy coalition. The more frequently a coalition visits and refreshes its scent posts, the stronger the impression of control. It's a subtle chemical form of communication, but one that governs access to reproduction and social order across hundreds of square kilometers. Interestingly, within the coalition itself, hierarchies are fluid but present. Though all members cooperate in territory defense and hunting, one male often assumes a dominant reproductive role, mating more frequently with visiting females. This alpha position is not enforced through violence, as seen in lion coalitions, but through subtle cues and cooperative deference, a testament to the evolutionary balance between kinship and competition. Because most coalitions are composed of brothers, the inclusive fitness benefits are shared. Even if one male sires more offspring, his brothers pass on shared genetic material by supporting his success. This kin selection, a well-established concept in evolutionary biology, helps explain the persistence and stability of coalitions over time. But coalition life is not without risk. A group's success hinges on the health and cohesion of its members. If one male is injured or lost, the group's territorial reach diminishes sharply. Fewer members mean reduced patrol frequency, higher vulnerability to lions or hyenas, and a shrinking sphere of influence. In high-density predator zones, even coalitions must navigate carefully. Lions, particularly males, will kill cheetahs on sight. Hyenas harass and pursue them with relentless endurance. The coalition's advantage is not brute strength, but synchronized evasion and unified response. When surprised or confronted, members scatter in different directions, only to regroup later, a tactic that confuses aggressors and preserves the integrity of the group. Coalitions also hunt together, though not with the cooperative precision of wolves or African wild dogs. Rather, they exploit numbers by taking turns. If prey is sighted, one male may initiate the chase while the others flank or follow loosely behind. Multiple males may attempt separate attacks on the same herd, increasing the odds that at least one strike lands. After the kill, sharing is surprisingly orderly. The brothers feed together with minimal aggression, a behavior rare among most large carnivores. This efficiency minimizes exposure time at kill sites and reduces the chance of attracting scavengers. These group dynamics also allow coalitions to thrive in ecological niches where lone cheetahs would falter. In open floodplains, arid savannas, and contested buffer zones near lion prides, coalitions push into marginal spaces and hold them with sheer persistence. They are more mobile, more visible, and more vocal than solitary individuals. Their presence alters the behavior of herbivores and reshapes predator maps, acting as pressure points in the larger carnivore mosaic of the ecosystem. Even their scent marks can trigger avoidance patterns in rivals, cascading into spatial shifts that ripple through the food web. And perhaps most striking of all is how the coalition structure challenges our broader understanding of feline behavior. While big cats are often portrayed as solitary, territorial, and fiercely individualistic, male cheetahs defy that mold. They demonstrate that cooperation, when shaped by evolutionary pressure and genetic interest, can flourish, even in species not known for sociability. These ghost brothers of the savannah reveal a side of predator life often obscured, one in which loyalty, coordination, and mutual reliance are not signs of weakness, but hallmarks of dominance. In the end, it is not their speed, nor their elegance, nor even their hunting prowess that elevates these male cheetahs above the dust and danger of the plains. It is their unity, forged by blood, maintained by trust and sharpened by necessity. In a landscape ruled by tooth and claw, where power is often measured in mass and volume, the coalition carves out its kingdom not by sheer force, but by moving as one. They are not the loudest hunters nor the most feared, but in the right terrain, at the right time, they become kings, silent, efficient, and utterly in control. In the quiet spaces between action and silence on the savannah, in the hours when the sun hangs low, the air stills, and even the insects seem to hold their breath, something subtler than the chase is unfolding. Beneath the acacia trees and along the winding game trails that slice through tall grasses, messages are being left, read, and replied to, but not with sound or sight. These are chemical conversations, structured and deliberate, transmitted not through vocal cords or body language, but through molecules suspended in air and soaked into bark. This is the secret language of scent, and for the cheetah, it is a system as critical to survival and dominance as speed itself. Cheetahs are often perceived as silent hunters, their lack of a roar separating them from their more bombastic cousins, lions and leopards, who use vocalizations to assert territory or attract mates. But silence does not mean absence of communication. In fact, cheetahs are one of the most olfactorily expressive of the big cats. They chirp to cubs, purr during grooming, yelp when startled. But their most enduring and influential messages are written in urine, feces, and glandular secretions. To the human observer, these markings may go unnoticed or dismissed as background behavior. But to another cheetah, every droplet carries a wealth of data: identity, reproductive status, territorial boundaries, even emotional state. The ecosystem in which these signals operate is not a blank canvas. It is a network, a mapped grid of key locations where scent accumulates, where territorial lines are defined, challenged, and renegotiated. Certain trees, often solitary, gnarled, and scarred, become scent posts, used and reused by generations of cheetahs. These trees are not random. They often stand along boundaries between territories, near water access points, or in transitional terrain between open plains and thickets. Their bark is scratched, their trunks stained. They are repositories of social memory, and each visit by a passing male is both an act of reinforcement and a probe, an inquiry into who last passed through and what status they carried. Males, particularly those in coalitions, mark prolifically. They spray vertical surfaces with urine in short, deliberate jets. Each mark contains a complex blend of chemicals derived from metabolic byproducts and specialized scent glands. The composition is not fixed, it changes with diet, stress, hormonal levels, and sexual activity. Receptors in the vomeronasal organ, a chemosensory structure in the roof of the mouth, analyze these scents with astonishing sensitivity, deciphering messages that no eye or ear could ever detect. A rival male might learn, for instance, whether he's entering an occupied territory, how many individuals patrol it, and how recently they were there. A receptive female can detect testosterone levels and genetic compatibility. What appears to be a simple gesture of urination is, in fact, a sophisticated broadcast, finely tuned to ecological context. Females engage in scent marking too, though less frequently and in more localized patterns. During estrus, they become particularly expressive, dragging hind legs across surfaces, urinating frequently, and sometimes rubbing their bodies against landmarks. These cues serve dual purposes, attracting males and advertising readiness. But in contrast to lions, where pride dynamics often involve direct conflict over mating rights, cheetah reproduction is less confrontational. Males respond to female scent with investigative tracking, sometimes across several kilometers. Vocalizations may follow if the female is near, but the initial phase of interaction is governed almost entirely through chemical traces. Dung also plays a role, particularly in territorial reinforcement. Cheetahs often defecate in prominent locations and may revisit the same dung piles repeatedly. The feces of cheetahs contain undigested fur, bone fragments, and microbial byproducts that, when exposed to heat and air, emit volatile compounds detectable at considerable distances. These piles are not just waste. They are beacons, layered over time, each deposit adding to a composite social record. Lions, hyenas, and jackals investigate these sites too, as do researchers, using them to track movements and monitor population health through genetic sampling. There's an evolutionary logic to this heavy reliance on scent. In a landscape where direct encounters are dangerous and energetically costly, indirect communication allows cheetahs to avoid unnecessary fights, locate mates efficiently, and maintain territory with minimal confrontation. The use of scent marking is particularly advantageous for a species with limited ability to defend resources physically. A single cheetah cannot afford injury. A coalition must patrol large areas. Chemical markers extend their presence, serving as psychological barriers that influence the movement of others without a tooth raised or claw drawn. This olfactory strategy becomes even more crucial in fragmented or marginal habitats, where territories overlap and resources are scarce. In places like Namibia's dry plains or the edges of the Kalahari, scent posts may be spaced further apart, and the delay between markings longer, increasing the risk of trespass. Here, scent communication becomes a balancing act between energy conservation and territorial assertion. Males must decide how often to patrol, how much energy to invest in marking, and which rivals to challenge. A fresh mark from an unknown male might trigger a spike in cortisol, the stress hormone, and prompt a defensive inspection. In this way, chemical signals influence not just behavior, but physiology, shaping the stress profiles and reproductive success of individuals over time. Even conflict is often mediated through scent. When two coalitions intersect, the initial encounter rarely begins with violence. Instead, it begins with mutual investigation, a slow, circling evaluation of each other's scent marks, posture, and intent. Bluff displays may follow, and only if boundaries are not respected does physical aggression erupt. Most disputes are resolved before a chase begins. The information has already been exchanged through scent, the confrontation shaped by what was read in the wind long before it was seen in the eye. To the cheetah, then, the savannah is not a silent plain, but a densely layered web of invisible messages, each tree, rock, and patch of grass holding cues from days or weeks past. Evolution has tuned their senses not just to sight and speed, but to this invisible language of territory, status, and survival. For all their fragility in physical confrontation, cheetahs exert remarkable control over their space and their rivals by harnessing the power of chemistry. And so, as the sun burns higher and the heat flattens the sounds of the plains, a lone male approaches a familiar tree. His movements are unhurried, almost routine. He sniffs, he assesses, and then, with a swift twitch of the tail and a short burst of urine, he adds his name to the record. It is not loud. It does not echo. But for those who know the code, it says everything. At first light, the tall grass glows with soft gold, veiling the raw edge of survival beneath a facade of tranquility. The savannah is quiet, but not at peace. Below the surface of the breeze and the birdsong, a constant tension hums through the landscape, a tension born of watchfulness, of hiding, of choosing every moment with surgical care. Somewhere in this grassland mosaic, barely taller than a shoebox and cloaked in a halo of grey fuzz, a cheetah cub lifts its head. Its eyes are still wide with inexperience, and its body, though marked with the ghost stripes of the adult it might one day become, is entirely unready for what surrounds it. For this cub, like 9 out of every 10 born in the wild, the odds are not just long, they are brutal, statistical near certainty. To understand why cheetah cub mortality is so staggeringly high, one must start with the role of the mother, a solitary architect of survival. Female cheetahs do not have the support structures of a pride like lions or the shared pup rearing of a wild dog pack. She raises her young alone, from birth through weaning and beyond, making every decision herself, where to hide them, when to hunt, when to move, when to run. And unlike most big cats, cheetah cubs are born extraordinarily helpless, blind, undeveloped, and silent. In their first days of life, they rely entirely on camouflage and concealment. Their pale silver mantles, a fringe of coarse silvery fur along their spine, mimic the dappled light of the savannah, and may even resemble the shaggy outline of the honey badger, a species known for its ferocity and largely avoided by predators. But mimicry alone does not grant safety, and the illusion fades quickly. From the moment they are born, cheetah cubs are at the mercy of a deadly cast of opportunists. Jackals, with their sharp noses and sharp teeth, patrol the grass in search of weak or hidden prey. Birds of prey, especially martial eagles, among the largest raptors in Africa, scan the plains with eyes adapted to spot movement from hundreds of meters in the air. Even baboons, omnivorous and aggressive, will kill and consume cheetah cubs if they find them unguarded. But the gravest threat often comes from lions and hyenas, whose interest is not hunger but domination. By killing the cubs of rival predators, They reduce future competition for prey, a form of interspecific pressure that operates not through direct conflict, but through the elimination of potential threats before they reach adulthood. In response, the cheetah mother becomes one of the most mobile and hyper-vigilant parents in the animal kingdom. She moves her cubs every few days, never allowing scent or sound to accumulate in a single location. Unlike leopards, who can stash cubs in trees or caves, cheetahs are ground-bound, relying entirely on low cover and isolation. This constant relocation comes at a cost. Every move exposes the cubs to new dangers. Every hunt the mother undertakes, which she must do alone without the support of other adults, leaves the cubs unattended. During these hunts, which may take hours or days depending on success and prey availability, the cubs are entirely vulnerable. A single failed kill can mean extended absence, and in that time a curious jackal or a drifting hyena may stumble upon the den. Even when successful, the mother must manage a balance between feeding herself and feeding her cubs. She cannot bring prey back to them, nor can she risk exposing them by feeding openly nearby. Instead, she must gorge quickly and return, burning precious calories in the process. As the cubs grow, she begins to introduce them to meat, leading them to kills when safe and encouraging them to observe and eventually participate in the hunt. But this gradual education, spanning several months, occurs against the backdrop of relentless attrition. Illness, infection, parasites and starvation all take their toll. A simple injury, a cold night without food, or an encounter with a venomous snake may end a cub's life before it ever sets foot in the adult world. The mother's investment is enormous. She bears the burden of rearing, feeding, defending, and teaching alone. The cubs do not reach true independence until they are around 18 months old, and even then, their survival remains uncertain. Young males often stay together, forming future coalitions, while females disperse into solitary ranges. But dispersal itself carries risk. In unfamiliar territory, young cheetahs must avoid dominant males, evade new predators, and find viable prey while refining hunting skills, all without the safety net of experience or allies. Evolution has not ignored this hardship. Cheetahs have relatively short interbirth intervals and can produce multiple cubs in a single litter, up to 6, though most litters average 3 to 4. This reproductive strategy, while not as prolific as rodents or hares, aims to offset the staggering mortality with numbers. Still, the average female may raise only a handful of cubs to adulthood in her lifetime. Each successful offspring represents the culmination of dozens of failed attempts, lost litters, and painful investment. From a population perspective, this high juvenile mortality contributes significantly to the species' vulnerability. With only around 7,000 cheetahs left in the wild, scattered across fragmented habitats in Africa and a remnant population in Iran, the loss of each potential adult matters. Conservation efforts increasingly focus not only on protecting adult cheetahs from habitat loss and human-wildlife conflict, but also on securing the reproductive success of mothers in the wild. In some regions, researchers track female cheetahs via GPS collars, monitoring their movements and estimating cub survival rates through indirect observation. Camera traps placed at kill sites and waterholes offer clues, a fleeting glimpse of a cub's tail, a cluster of small tracks in the dust. Each one a data point in the fight to understand and reduce mortality. But there is no intervention more powerful than ecological stability. Cheetah cub survival increases dramatically in areas with lower densities of lions and hyenas, ample prey availability, and sufficient cover for concealment. Protected reserves and corridors that allow for uninterrupted movement and breeding are essential. Without space to roam, without safe places to raise young, the cheetah's evolutionary strategy collapses, not from a lack of speed or skill, but from the cumulative erosion of opportunity. In the end, the story of a cheetah cub is not one of innocence or helpless charm. It is a study in attrition, a slow-motion siege against chance and biology. Every day lived is an improbable triumph, a victory against odds designed by an unforgiving ecosystem. When a cub grows into an adult, it carries not just its own survival, but the legacy of a mother who moved silently through the grass, who fought without roaring, and who gambled everything on a future she would never see through to the end. Beneath the oppressive glare of the African midday sun, where shadows shrink to slivers and the wind carries little but dust and heat, the open savannah seems an unlikely place for subtlety. Here, where life is built on boldness, size, strength, sound, one might expect predators to operate with brute force or overwhelming presence. But in the realm of the cheetah, Success has never relied on size or sound. It lies in precision, in calculation, in the unspoken understanding of time, space, and sensory advantage. While popular imagination fixates on the explosive sprint, the truth is far more nuanced. The cheetah is not just fast, it is strategic. Its survival depends not on how quickly it can run, but on how wisely it chooses to do so. Long before the chase, before muscles coil or claws bite the earth, the cheetah begins with reconnaissance. It scans not only the movement of prey, but the behavior of the wind. With nasal passages adapted to both thermoregulation and scent detection, the cheetah reads air currents like a map. Wind direction determines approach. A wrong move, upwind instead of downwind, could carry the predator's scent toward vigilant antelope and scatter them before the hunt begins. In an ecosystem where failed chases burn critical energy and attract unwanted attention, scent control is not just a preference. It is the first rule of efficiency. Vision follows scent. A cheetah's eyesight is exceptionally tuned for daylight acuity. Unlike nocturnal hunters, cheetahs rely on the high-contrast brightness of the savannah to detect subtle twitching tails, flicks of an ear, or the ripple of tension in a nervous herd. Their eyes contain a high density of cone cells, which grants them color vision and depth perception crucial for tracking motion over distance. Black tear marks running from their eyes to the corners of their mouth reduce sun glare, a natural adaptation akin to the black grease used by athletes. From atop termite mounds or low ridges, they assess the terrain as a general might survey a battlefield, not just identifying prey, but calculating how that prey might react, where it might flee, and whether nearby cover or terrain features can be used to shape the outcome. Terrain selection is a critical and often underestimated element of the cheetah's hunting repertoire. Contrary to expectation, cheetahs do not always choose the flattest, most open spaces for pursuit. Slight inclines, patches of bush, or shallow erosion channels are used to conceal movement and narrow escape routes. A successful hunt often begins with choosing the right location, one where the target can't see the approach until it's too late, where vegetation obscures the cheetah's silhouette, and where the landscape forces prey into a predictable trajectory. This is not instinct alone. It is learned behavior, refined through trial and observation, passed from mothers to cubs, not through words, but through example and repetition. Timing is equally crucial. While cheetahs are diurnal, meaning they hunt during the day, they rarely strike in the heat of noon. Instead, they favor the cooler fringes of the day, the early morning hours, when dew still clings to the grass and visibility is high, or late afternoon, when the long shadows of acacias stretch across the plain. These windows are carefully chosen not just to minimize thermal stress, but to exploit the lull in activity among lions and hyenas, who prefer shade and sleep when the sun bears down. The cheetah knows it is not alone in this ecosystem. Every decision is made with an awareness of the carnivorous hierarchy. How long until scavengers arrive, where lion prides are resting, and how far a hunt might carry it from cover. Success means not just catching the prey, but surviving long enough to eat it. Even the sprint, the most dramatic moment in the cheetah's day, is not always used. The energy cost is immense. During a chase, the cheetah's heart rate can spike beyond 200 beats per minute, its respiratory system working at maximum capacity to oxygenate muscles engaged in some of the most explosive acceleration in the animal kingdom. The temperature of its core can rise to dangerous levels in under a minute. For this reason, a cheetah may shadow prey for hours before committing, watching for missteps, gauging reaction time, and even waiting for cloud cover or a gust of wind to mask its advance. The sprint, when it happens, is almost always a calculated conclusion, not a gamble. And sometimes there is no sprint at all. In open terrain, where visual detection is constant and there are few obstacles to break line of sight, cheetahs have adapted an unexpected tactic: stealth. They use grass height to their advantage, lowering their body to blend into the wavering horizon. They freeze when eyes turn their way, inch forward only when heads are down. They approach not directly, but in zigzagging arcs, reducing the silhouette profile visible to prey. Observations have recorded cheetahs crawling on their bellies for over 200 meters, not because they cannot run, but because they know when not to. Once the kill is made, intelligence continues to dictate behavior. Unlike lions who roar and claim, or hyenas who, overwhelmed by numbers, cheetahs devour in silence. They drag carcasses into shade or tall grass, eating rapidly with one ear always tuned to the surrounding bush. They do not gorge indiscriminately. Instead, they strip meat cleanly, avoiding bones they are ill-equipped to crush. Their lightweight skull and reduced jaw musculature, adaptations for speed, make prolonged feeding impossible. Every second spent feeding is a risk, and so they eat with an urgency rooted not in greed, but in anticipation of theft. Vultures circling above signal trouble. The sound of a branch snapping might send them fleeing before the first bite is finished. All of this reveals a deeper truth often missed in simplified narratives of predator life. The cheetah is not just a runner. It is a master of subtlety, of environmental reading, of decisions made in silence. It must think several moves ahead, anticipate variables, and constantly weigh risk against reward. In this way, its intelligence is not one of manipulation or problem-solving tools, like that of primates or corvids, but of ecological fluency, an intelligence born from acute awareness of landscape, weather, biology, and the psychological states of its prey. This strategic mind extends beyond the individual. Mothers pass these lessons on to their cubs, not through teaching in the human sense, but through modeled behavior. Young cheetahs observe their mother's movement, her choices in terrain and timing, her restraint in when to act and when to wait. Over time, they begin to mirror her methods, not in imitation alone, but through cognitive imprinting. What looks like instinct is often inherited wisdom, a generational refinement of survival intelligence that has allowed the species to persist across millennia, despite its many disadvantages in strength and social power. In the greater web of the savannah, where every species carves a role through competition and constraint, the cheetah's place is carved not through force, but finesse. It is an apex predator not by sheer dominance, but by 1,000 quiet decisions, each one perfectly calibrated to the moment. Speed may be the tool it is famous for, but in truth, speed is only the final act. The real hunt begins long before the chase, in the wind, in the grass, in the spaces where silence and sight become strategy.